Hello, and welcome to the Time on Screen podcast. My name is Zach Kazan. I'm the managing editor at Warn & Wound. Time on Screen's a podcast where we talk about movies and watches, but mostly movies these days, I think. And we've got a really good one to talk about. We've been kind of building up to this for a while. It requires some emotional, leading up to it. This is a good one. We're talking about There Will Be Blood today. A classic Paul Thomas Anderson movie in anticipation of the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, which will be out just days from when this podcast drops. We're all very excited. I'm joined by Kat Shoulders and Liam O'Donnell. Kat, Liam, how are you guys doing?
Great.
Doing great. Ready to dive in.
Yeah, great to see you. This is a movie that we've talked about doing on Time on Screen for a while. We did Phantom Thread. I did Phantom Thread with Brett Braley earlier this year. Also kind of in anticipation of the Paul Thomas Anderson movie, which at that point was slated for August. It got delayed a little bit. So this is like the PTA year. Yeah. And so really excited to, return to his films. And this is like the juiciest one, I think, like the one with the, like the most meat on the bone, the one to, it's just really like naughty and complex and great performances. So excited to talk to you guys about it. Before we get into There Will Be Blood in earnest, this is still something of a watch podcast, so we'll do a wrist check. Kat, what are you wearing today?
I've got my Formex Reef on today. This is the collective Reef with the bronze brushed dial. Just threw this on the rubber strap and I'm wearing it today.
Cool. Liam, how about you?
Today is the White Birch.
Excellent.
Oh, very nice. Yep. Yeah.
I wore this last night at our event, and I thought I'd wear it again today.
Very cool. It's a great watch. I'm wearing my Fears Brunswick Aurora Mother of Pearl dial.
Very beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. So we got the watch stuff out of the way. Let's talk about There Will Be Blood. There Will Be Blood is it was released in the winter of 2007. I want to start off by asking you guys, who were you when you saw this movie? What were you doing in 2007? And what was your like kind of first impression of There Will Be Blood the first time you saw it? And did you see it when it was initially released? Kat, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I'll be honest. I was in high school in 2007, and I did not watch this movie when it came out because I probably didn't care.
Yeah.
I remember it coming out specifically because I do remember what is the other Western movie that came out that year?
No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, I remember those two sort of coming out, and it was a big deal. And I was into movies in high school, certainly, but it wasn't a movie that like really, I don't know, hit home with me. And so I didn't see this probably till 2011, 2012, I would say. I know I was dating my now husband at the time. And so I do remember watching it with him, and it's sort of just striking me immediately. And it was a movie I thought about for days after I watched it and wasn't even quite sure after if I liked it or not, but just couldn't stop thinking about it. And to be honest, I'm glad I didn't watch this in high school because I think at the time I was immature, and I think I would have brushed it off as a movie I didn't really like. I think I needed to be more mature to watch and appreciate this movie, and it left a bigger impact, I think, watching it later in sort of my 20s rather than 17 years old,
Yeah, this doesn't strike me as a movie like for the teens, Yeah. We're going to talk about like the movies of 2007 in a minute here, but like Superbad is another 2007 movie. Like that's a movie that like
I did watch that in high school.
That's what the kids were going to in the theater in 2007. It's definitely a movie that you kind of like appreciate in a different way as you get older. I think is something I've found. Liam, how about you? Did you see this when it first came out, or did you discover it a little later?
No, I didn't. Again, I'm in the same boat as Kat here. I was in high school, the very end of high school, and this just wasn't on my radar at that point. I was certainly watching films of all sorts at that point, but for whatever reason, that just wasn't on my radar, and I didn't see it until sort of a few years later when I was actively trying to watch more diverse and interesting and acclaimed films and try and broaden my movie repertoire. So this one, but when I did see it, it stayed with me for days as well. It had it kind of shook me to my core, for many different reasons in terms of its, its subject matter, its sort of interpersonal relationships that are built and kind of the callous nature of Plainview as well. So it was an intense film for me, but I've watched it many, many times since.
So I actually just remembered something. This movie actually got spoiled for me before I actually watched it. I fell asleep one night with like HBO on in the background. I was watching a movie, fell asleep on the couch, and I remember waking up to the end bowling alley scene of this movie. And thinking,
by the way, spoiler warning, obviously, for There Will Be Blood. We're going to be talking about the ending at some point.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, that's on you.
So I remember waking up to that scene and being like, holy crap, what is this movie? And I think that is really what struck me, like, oh, I need to watch this. And so, I actually, like, I hadn't even thought about that. And it just popped in my head. Like, I do remember sort of getting spoiled on like the ending of this movie and then being really, really, really curious of like, what the movie was about.
How did you wind up in the bowling alley? That's, I mean, so the ending, I think we'll talk about the ending specifically kind of like at length at some point over the course of the next hour or so. But it's like one of the most like iconic, powerful endings of any movie I think I've ever seen. It's just like, and it's also like the only way this movie could end. Like I cannot imagine. Like it can't end any other way. So I saw this movie. I did see this movie in the theater. I was maybe like 2 years out of college at this point, and like I was a big, I had kind of like discovered Paul Thomas Anderson in high school with like Boogie Nights. I remember that was like 97 probably, and or around that time, and I remember that was a really big deal, if you were kind of like into movies at that time. And Magnolia was another one. When that came out, I was very, very into that. And I saw Paul Thomas Anderson was like on my radar, and this movie ahead of its release was just like so hyped, and like the early reviews were just so good, and we'll talk about the reviews. And
was there a lot of advertising for it, or was it kind of?
I don't remember if there was like a lot of advertising. Like this movie was it made money, but it wasn't like a box office hit. I think it made like under $100 million total, but it only cost I think like 20 million or something to.
Oh well, as long as you make sort of double or more, that's usually a good sign.
Yeah, so like it was Paul Thomas Anderson's like big critical breakthrough, and the one where it really kind of like separated him from his previous films in a way. Like this was really the one, and I talked about this with Brett in the Phantom Thread podcast. It was the one where like his personal style really became evident. He wasn't like aping Scorsese and Altman so much, with this movie. He had kind of like developed his own unique like perspective and really like a point of view on like a thematic point of view on like, America and like these big questions that this movie is asking. So it was incredibly hyped. And I remember, of course living in New Hampshire, like this movie didn't like, it took a while for it to get here. And I remember driving with a friend of mine out to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, which is, like 45 minutes away on the coast of New Hampshire, and seeing the movie there in like a big, not IMAX screen, but like a big screen, like really nice theater. And I was just like overwhelmed by it. Like I remember like we got there kind of late, and I remember like we had to sit like kind of close to the front, which for a movie like this, which is like 2 hours and 40 minutes long, and has these like huge expansive shots of it's shot in Texas. It's supposed to be California, but it's just like the landscape of this movie is incredible. And so like I remember just like being absolutely like overwhelmed by it visually, and like almost not even. I certainly like I'm following the plot. I recognize the script is great right from the start, but like it was really sort of like my first impression was one of just being like visually overwhelmed and sonically overwhelmed too. The Johnny Greenwood score was very very important to me early on. But man, like it really kind of like it was one of those like rare times where the hype really felt like it was warranted for this movie.
Definitely.
It's a different landscape too for cinema back then as well. Like obviously you didn't have streaming. Nothing went direct to streaming because that didn't exist.
Yep.
And I feel like most of any kind of coverage on films was either in print and then just in trailers during other movies. Like you don't have YouTube ads, you don't have social media, and so like I feel like in a way this didn't kind of get the launch that it But like if it was launched today, it would be very different, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if it was launched today, it would be launched, I think, like One Battle After Another is being launched with like a huge glitzy campaign, and you see Leonardo DiCaprio every time you open Instagram and he's giving an interview, and it's like
exactly.
So it would be very different. So let's talk a little bit about like the movie landscape in 2007. 2007 is like kind of now regarded as one of like the last great years for cinema, I think.
It was a great year, yeah.
There were a lot of like really important movies from like the film nerd kind of perspective, movies that like we loved then and we still revere now. And it was also like a great year for like popular movies, movies that like did really well at the box office. I'm just going to like list off a handful of movies that came out in 2007. I don't love all these movies, but they were kind of like, I feel like these represent the year. We already talked about No Country for Old Men. Michael Clayton, amazing movie. Tony Gilroy's, masterpiece with George Clooney. Superbad, we talked about. Knocked Up was 2007.
Yeah.
300, a movie I don't really like, but was a huge hit. It was 2007.
Yeah,
Assassination of Jesse James by the coward Robert Ford, which is a great movie, kind of a little bit lost to time. Like I feel like if that came out in another year, like that would be more warmly remembered. Zodiac was 2007. Kat, I know you love Zodiac.
Phenomenal film.
Hot Fuzz, Ratatouille. We're both
hey, it's iconic.
Ratatouille's a huge hit. That was, I mean, people go into movies in 2007.
No, it's part of the cultural lexicon for sure.
Yeah, some personal favorites. Sunshine, the Danny Boyle science fiction movie. Gone Baby
Just
Gone.
watched that again.
Ben Affleck's really wonderful movie. Into the Wild.
Love that one too.
Eastern Promises.
Atonement.
Atonement. Yeah, that was a big Oscar movie that year. So like this is a year where there's like a lot of like critical favorites, and people are like going to the movies. Like I can remember like there was just kind of like something in the air. Like I saw all these movies in the theater basically. And it was just like a very different time. Like I remember that like very fondly.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, I do remember in high school, I was getting Netflix by disc still. So it was either you rented the movie or you were watching it in theaters because there wasn't the streaming platforms at that point.
It was a totally different environment.
Miss those days.
Same. For me it was going to the local video store. We didn't have, there was Blockbusters, but we had another brand chain called Video Easy, and you'd go in on a Tuesday night. That'd be Cheap Tuesdays, and instead of looking at ads on Instagram or YouTube, you'd sort of browse DVD cases like they were billboards, and it was all about it's like selecting a bottle of wine. You just pick it based on the cover.
No, totally.
That was kind of part of the joy of like kind of finding something that was good, even though you didn't really know what it was about.
No, for sure. So this movie was on like every top 10 list. It was like number one on so many top 10 lists. Rolling Stone, Chicago Tribune, Entertainment Weekly, AV Club. Like the list, it just goes on and on. All of it, the best movie.
It's a masterpiece.
Yeah, it was recently number 4 on the New York Times list of the best movies of the century so far. It was number 1 on Rolling Stone's list of the same same qualifications. 8 Oscar nominations, 2 wins. Daniel Day-Lewis wins for Best Actor. Robert Elswit wins for Cinematography. It loses Best Picture to No Country for Old Men. And Paul Thomas Anderson was nominated for Best Director and did not win. I wanted to ask you guys, is Paul Thomas Anderson the best active director to have never won an Academy Award? Like, to me, the only other person really in contention is David Fincher, but I'd probably give it to PTA at this point.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
Yeah. Liam, it's just like, it's crazy that like he's never won a Best Director Academy Award considering his output. Like he really, like every movie he makes is just like,
it's pretty iconic.
Exactly what he wants.
Yeah.
You feel like he's getting like exactly his vision on screen every time.
In that sense.
Yeah.
It's like exacting.
Yeah.
I would say that it's probably not his fault. It's just the fact that he releases fantastic films with other really fantastic films. So he just needs to time it better, I guess.
There's a lot of already, just
buzz,
days before it's out. There's a lot of buzz that One Battle After Another is going to be the movie. We'll see. I'm really excited to see it. I want to just quickly read. This is from the the American Film Institute, the AFI, named There Will Be Blood the top movie of 2007. And in their write-up, they wrote, There Will Be Blood is bravura filmmaking by one of American film's modern masters. Paul Thomas Anderson's epic poem of savagery, optimism, and obsession is a true meditation on America. The film drills down into the dark heart of capitalism, where domination, not gain, is the ultimate goal. In a career defined by transcendent performances, Daniel Day-Lewis creates a character so rich and so towering that Daniel Plainview will haunt the history of film for generations to come. I feel like that kind of like gets right at it. Like that's sort of something.
Totally.
That's a good blurb for sure.
Pretty nicely. So just a real quick sort of like plot overview. This is really like a character study, I think, about, you know, Daniel Plainview and his relationship with Eli Sunday, a preacher that he encounters. Essentially, it follows Daniel Plainview, silver miner turned oilman, as he embarks on a quest to find wealth at any cost during the California oil boom in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. I find it kind of hard to watch this movie these days and not think about like the current sort of set of billionaires kind of like doing something similar in California, you know, coincidentally. When you guys watch this movie in 2025, what do you think this movie is like really about?
I'd say it's capitalism versus religion. You know, I think it sort of pits these two powers against each other. It's sort of like an exploration as to what would happen if you know, these two were at each other's necks, I think. And they're embodied by two, you know, people specifically. So, you know, I think Eli's sort of religion, sort of exploitive, sort of taking advantage of people, and sort of demand obedience. And, you know, Daniel's is just all encompassing, you know, it's like all or nothing. And then, you know, he kind of embodies misanthropy, and then it just really strips away every kind of human element in anything. So he's a force of nature in that regard, I think.
Yeah. I viewed it obviously with those notes in mind, especially capitalism. I viewed this movie about really greed, but also like discovery in a lot of different ways, and ultimately a movie about people taking advantage of one another in their own sort of ways. And, you know, for Daniel, it was taking advantage of others to obtain their land, and for Eli, it was taking advantage of people for his own ego, I think. And then you look at some of the other characters, like the gentleman that comes in and plays his brother Henry, you know, taking advantage of Daniel for his own gain and trying to steal some of his money. You know, I think it's just like a movie about people really just taking advantage of each other at the end of the day. What
the
about
American
you, Zach?
experience in a lot of ways. It's just like
the American way.
What
about you, Kazan?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like this is a movie about like the I think perils of like capitalism, like pretty much, and like the way that capitalism is kind of like shaped and also destroyed, you know, America in a lot of ways. Like this is, I think ultimately this is like a big movie about the American experience. And you know, a lot of people have kind of like, I've just sort of been reading a lot of, you know, reviews and writing about this movie. It's something that comes up over and over again is that you know, like every couple of decades, like a filmmaker will like attempt to make a movie like this about America, kind of like looking back on the previous century. And I think this is sort of like Paul Thomas Anderson working in that tradition, you know, making like a movie that's a big epic. I don't know if you'd call this like a grand entertainment, because it's like kind of a downer to watch, but like I think that like this movie's about a lot of the same things that like The Godfather is about. It's
I
like,
saw a lot of parallels to Godfather in this movie.
Yeah, it's about like it, you know, it's about the accumulation of power and like the you know,
ego and
family and you know, like The Godfather's, you know, a story about an American family filtered through, you know, like mafia tropes. And you know, this is, you know, a story about unfettered capitalism filtered through some like ideas of the Western, in a lot of ways. I also think that something else I thought about a lot watching it most recently, I watched it twice this week, so I really got in Daniel Plainview's head, which is dangerous. But it's also like really a movie about California and like the way that California plays such an important role in like the development of this country. And of course Paul Thomas Anderson is a native Californian, and most of his movies are set in, I think all his movies are set in California. Someone correct me if I'm wrong there, but like he's like clearly just like obsessed with California, and like is a it's just it's part of him, and that's also what this movie is about. And I think it's tied to some other movies like Chinatown, which is something we can maybe talk about later, which is also kind of like another version of this, which is about like, the way that like the natural world in California like play a role in like shaping America. But like like bottom line though, is it's like a brilliant character study of a truly like evil person in Daniel Plainview, and this like amazing Daniel Day-Lewis performance. Something else I want to ask you guys about is like, is this a movie that you like, do you return to this movie a lot? Like I kind of like, I love Paul Thomas Anderson. He's I probably my favorite working director. And I think this is, we'll get to our personal PTA lists later, but this isn't the movie that I would go back and rewatch of his the most, because it's like I feel like it's kind of an ordeal to kind of like sit through sometimes. It's just like traumatic. So like I was curious, like, do you guys find yourself like returning to this one a lot and rewatching it?
I do.
Same.
I think it's a heavy movie. I'm not gonna lie. It is very, very heavy, but it is so beautiful. And I oftentimes turn it on, even if I'm not sitting and like directly watching it, I might be doing something else. I just have it on the background because the scenes are just magnificent. And I think there's so many great just like screenshots from this movie that are just iconic and big and really thematic. And I put it on often just because like I feel like we don't have movies like that as much anymore. So I often go back to movies like this, even when they're very somber and really they kind of can put you in a down mood. But I do watch this one at least a couple times a year. I'd say.
Wow, that's a lot. Honestly, that's a like. So me, like I love a dark movie. Like I, I've been on this podcast. I've talked about how I rewatch like Prometheus and Zodiac a lot. Like these are like real like sicko movies, but for some reason like this one I love
I love the character of Daniel Plainview. I think and we can talk about it more here in a second, but like there is so much in what he doesn't say in this movie. It's pretty incredible, and I think maybe one of Daniel Day-Lewis's best performances I've ever seen in my mind. And I think just the expressions, and I was really paying attention last night, there's just so much in the unsaid with him in this movie. There's like a whole dialogue going on with just his expressions you can read, and you don't need words to understand what he's feeling. That I just it's a great film, and I love watching it.
Yeah, it's an incredible performance, and he's like so magnetic as this like terrible person in this movie. It like that is kind of like addicting to watch, and it's like this is what Daniel Day-Lewis is about. Like he's so committed to, and the way that he like kind of turns himself into every character that he plays in some ways, like obviously part of like his legend, but it really kind of, I think, reaches a peak in this movie.
I've said this to so many different people that Daniel Day-Lewis for me is virtually the only actor that I forget that it's Daniel Day-Lewis. He becomes the character, and then it's like I see nothing else except for that character, and I think that's a truly incredible talent, singular in that sense. I feel like, but I agree, Kat. I mean, I've watched this multiple times a year. I recently got to see it at the Paris Theater in New York with guest speaker Paul Dano at the end for a little Q&A,
That's awesome.
which was super cool. And I agree. This film is as much about sound and silence and atmosphere as it is about dialogue. I feel like when there isn't dialogue, it's just as powerful as when there is. And I think a good example of that is that the opening sequence, the first 15 minutes where he's clawing his way out of the mine shaft, there's no dialogue. It's just sound, and that's about it. And it's incredible in that sense.
Yeah, that sequence is amazing, and I can remember watching that, and I'm sure you had a similar experience watching it theatrically recently. But I specifically remember the first time seeing it in a packed house in 2007 or probably 2008, actually, at that point. Like, just like the silence in the theater, and like there's just this, you have that sense in a movie theater when everyone is like really engaged, and like there's no
hear a pin drop,
there's no rustling of popcorn buckets or anything, or crinkle of bags or anything, and it's really powerful, and that's like a statement that PTA is making in those first 15 minutes, and like it plays out like a silent film, and there's so much communicated by Daniel Day-Lewis in this silent performance, as well as the production design and the score. It all kind of
absolutely
like works
together. And I think that actually goes on throughout the rest of the movie. It's something I paid attention to last night. There's obviously a great film score here by Johnny Greenwood, but it's the whole movie's not filled with it either. And I think a lot of movies that we watch now, every silent moment there's some film score at least vaguely playing in the background. There's a lot of silent moments in this movie, and it feels very real. You can hear the rustle of someone's jacket and walking, and there's a lot of great, the sound design is really, really, it makes you feel like you're there with them. It's very intimate in a way. So while they tend to use the music in these really big moments, but in the small ones, it's really quiet and kind of even more scary in a way, because you feel like you're there in the room with Daniel.
Yep.
It's like when you lose one sense and it amplifies another in a way.
Yeah.
You don't have sound, so the visuals become more powerful. You're sort of attuned to that. I also will say that I feel like PTA's visual language in this film is very like Kubrickian. It's got a very still like, with Boogie Nights there was lots of sweeping camera moves, a little more flair to it, I guess, but this has a stillness to it, almost like a stoic nature in a way.
It's the camera is a lot more restrained in this movie. You don't have, and that's just I think because Boogie Nights is all about they're doing coke in the 70s, and it's fast paced, and this is just different. This is this is the turn of the 20th century, and it's a different life, and it's slower, and the camera moves more slowly, and it lets you it lingers on these landscapes, and also it lingers on like his suits and like the interior, and like it really kind of like puts you, like immerses you in a completely different way than like Boogie Nights and Magnolia immersed you. Just like another real quick thing on the score, like I'm a big Radiohead fan, and so like I think this was Johnny Greenwood's first score for a film, and I think it kind of like announced him as like a like a major composer for movies. And so like leading up to seeing the movie, I was like very interested in like what Johnny Greenwood would do for for a score in this movie, and like it really kind of like blew me away like immediately. And I love how it's to catch your point, like it's very restrained, and like it comes in at particular times where it's like really, really memorable. Like the oil derrick fire, of course, is I think probably like the key moment, maybe in the entire movie, but certainly for Greenwood's score. And I still listen to a lot of Radiohead. They're one of my favorite bands, and like there are times when like I'm listening to Radiohead, and like I can hear like elements of like this score. Like,
interesting.
It's like it's really I don't know. He's a genius, and like a great
totally
great composer, and just really just like nailed this, and like so many other scores now. So
Liam, you just mentioned a bit ago that there was some sort of Kubrick elements to this movie, and the start of it, there's just this ominous sound immediately. And I can only imagine people in the theater thinking, is this like a horror movie? Which many could argue is.
Yeah, it kind of is.
In a way, right? But it just has that just gong at the very beginning, and it's just like, ooh, this is like kind of scary. And then you immediately go into those 15 minutes of really silent film, and then I almost wish I had seen this in theater, because I can imagine thinking, is this going to be a silent movie? Like, what the fuck? Like, I didn't know that, right? But I just paid attention to those like big musical elements at the start of it, and I immediately did think of like The Shining and Kubrick, and kind of making a statement with just this ominous music right at the start of the film to kind of set the tone for the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe that opening sound. I don't know what you would actually call that.
It's just like a drone. It's just like a
drone. Yeah, that's probably the best way to explain it. And it goes from sort of high to low, or I think it's the other way around. It sort of goes up and then it peaks. But I to riff on what you said there, Kat, I feel like it kind of primes you for the silence.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. It's also,
this movie could have a whole nother, the music could be very, I mean, they're discovering land, and it could be, I mean, they could have made this music more happy, more, discovery-like. And I think he is telling people from the beginning, like, bad things are going to happen, you know? And it's like the music sets the tone for the rest of the film.
Another director makes this movie, it's like, it sounds like Aaron Copland or something, and not like, and not like this sort of like weird electronic, you know, minimalist music, but like there's
that juxtaposition for sure.
There's sort of a, you know, there's an archetype to like the way Westerns are scored, you know, and this is like very much against, against that. So, just an amazing score. The score was not nominated for an Academy Award because it didn't qualify, because there was like previously used elements in the score. So little kind of technicality there, but great piece of music for sure. Some stray questions I wanted to ask you guys about this movie that sort of like occurred to me on my recent rewatch. There are like no women in this movie, which is something that it's like, you know, this movie specifically is criticized for, and also PTA has been criticized for the way he writes female characters. You know, there just aren't a lot of his movies are very
make up for that in the next one. For my,
I think
gathering.
so. There's like the cast is like stacked with like impressive, you know, impressive women, and you know, in that movie. So I you know, fingers crossed. But like that's something that people have kind of like criticized him for. You know, the way he kind of like you know, like elevates or doesn't elevate women in his films. This is like this is a very like kind of hyper masculine like movie in a lot of ways. But I don't know. It really kind of. It struck me on this rewatch that like there are no prominent women in this movie. I wanted to get your guys' take on that.
Yeah, I mean, something I certainly noticed. I don't think I'm bothered by it, just because I think Paul is really just showing the characters that he needs to show in this movie, and Daniel Plainview hates people in general. So I think we're limited with who he interacts with at any point in the movie, whether it's a man or a woman. And I guess I'm just I never really struck me like, oh my gosh, there's no women in this movie. But I think that's okay. I think it's okay that there's no women, and I think it just makes sense for the storyline. And you know, there's sometimes it's just like the characters just don't make sense in a film.
There is apparently in the screenplay, which I haven't read, but it's, you know, it's out there, you can find it. Apparently it's explained that Plainview is impotent, which, you know, would explain in a certain sense like why he doesn't seem to have any sort of like romantic, you know, pursuits with a woman anyway. There's all sorts of theories about him and Henry.
Oh, that's interesting.
But
because that would also explain the scene where him and Henry are at the bar or the brothel or whatever, and
it adds a completely different layer to that. But like, you know, it's explained in the script that he, you know, is impotent, but it's not directly stated in the, you know, in the film. So I think that's interesting that like they clearly PTA made a choice not to, you know, not to do that. Just a real quick anecdote. This is funny. So as I'm sitting down to watch this movie, for the rewatch of this, but earlier this week, it's during that like opening scene, and I get an Instagram DM from James Stacey, editor-in-chief of Hodinkee, and it's a reel of someone like, you know, talking about There Will Be Blood as you know, as like a guy's movie. I'll put the reel in the show notes. It's like it's quite funny, and Jay, like, I don't know, there's like a mind meld happening with me and James Stacey at that particular
moment. What a coincidence!
I DM'd him right back. I'm like, I literally am 10 minutes into There Will Be Blood, But at that moment, and he said he's looking forward to listening. So shout out James if you're listening. But like the Instagram reel is really it's about how like men watch There Will Be Blood and they don't talk to women about There Will Be Blood. And I said, like, I'm literally getting on a podcast with Kat Shoulders.
Yeah, and this is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah. So there you go.
It's true. I don't think I've ever spoken to any woman about There Will Be Blood. So I think there's some truth to that.
I think. I mean, I have. I have female friends who've seen and admired this movie, Kat included. But that is sort of like the joke about this movie.
Yeah,
like, for years,
I mean, it is. I think the overall nature of it is really hyper masculine. But I think more than anything, what I see in this movie is a man that's just like really self-obsessed, right? And I think because of that, he's not interested in anybody else. And we almost see that kind of character in Phantom Thread as well, but we do see him find someone that can kind of break through that wall as someone that's just really hyper-focused on his own goals in life. And I think, like, to me, that's what Daniel Plainview, he's just obsessed with, breaking ground, becoming a millionaire, and getting away from everyone he possibly can. And like to me, just love didn't really fit into that, but love came through it in the aspect of maybe HW and his son in the movie. But I didn't really think anything of it. And as a woman, I can really appreciate this movie, even though there's no other female characters in it, because I think it's just a great character movie. Period.
Yep, for sure. Something else I wanted to ask you guys is about, this is sort of like one of the central questions of the movie, something that's been, discussed since its release, is the nature of Daniel's relationship with HW. Is there like genuine like father-son love there? Obviously HW is not Daniel Plainview's son, but he kind of like, the bastard in a basket. He like, steals him away, in the beginning of the film. And he poses him as his son and uses him for his business interests. Yeah. And one of the kind of like central sort of like conflicts, in this movie is like, is there like real affection there, or is he purely just a prop for Daniel? And so I'm going to get your guys' take on that.
I have some strong opinions, but I want to throw this over to Liam because you are the only father in the group. Like, what is your take? What is your take? Because you have a little son. What is your take on his relationship with HW?
It's a really good question, and something I've actually not thought about thus far. But I feel like in the scenes where, at least in the beginning, in the early days when he's much younger, there's scenes where it's just the two of them together. And it shows, rare, fleeting moments of sort of a father-son relationship. And so I think even though Plainview is sort of devoid of all compassion and empathy, I feel like HW is able to pull out sort of a Gene Deep kind of fatherhood in him in like really super fleeting moments. But on the flip side of that, when they show sort of the montage at the end of what I sort of interpret as HW's recollection of his childhood, and it shows Plainview pushing him away and like, not acknowledging him. And so it makes me think, is everything that we've been shown in the film purely from Plainview's point of view? And it's just him telling himself that he was a good father, even though he wasn't. So I think it kind of poses the question, but ultimately I think, HW is, Plainview's human tether in a sense. It humanizes him, but only for, the gain of him making everyone else not succeed.
Yeah. And like, I think the way that that's proven out, I totally agree with that. And I think the way that that's kind of like shown in the movie is the way the relationship changes after HW loses his hearing, and he's no longer useful to Daniel.
Kind of treats him like a broken tool. It has no need for him anymore.
Yeah. And I think that like Daniel is like genuinely distressed about that.
Yes.
But not because of like real caring for HW, but because he knows this is going to make it more difficult to get the pipeline, and it's it's a complication in his in his life, and he doesn't really, he ultimately does not have any like qualms about just, like, leaving him on that train, to send him off to the school.
I disagree. I maybe I have too much empathy for Daniel in this movie, but
breaking
news:
Kat sides with Daniel Plainview. There will be blood.
Yeah. No, I think that I think Daniel was going to set off to do what he wanted to do in life, no matter what, whether or not that child had come into his life. But I see these sort of heartfelt moments with HW in him, and I think even after the hearing loss, these early 1900s, I think parenting looked a lot different in general, and I think what I saw with Daniel is he is so gentle with HW, even after the hearing loss, and HW was angry and, fighting back at the doctors and him. And, and even when Daniel's having to walk away, he can't even look up because I think he is truly hurt by leaving him and sending him off. I don't think he wants to do that. I think it's very difficult for him. And the moment when they reunite, when HW comes back, and Daniel is embracing him, he says something of the nature of like, that's it right there. Like, that feels really good. Like, I needed that. And he needed HW back. And whether or not it's father
then HW
son,
like punches him though. Like
but he does, because he's angry too. He's angry at his dad for sending him off. And again, I think a single father in the early 1900s, he obviously had to work and like just needed HW was being, quite honestly, like he's being very difficult at that time, and so try to set their like little home on fire and like was acting out. So I think, I know a lot of parents now that just send their kids off to boarding schools, and I think like that's what he did, and he I can tell it kind of regretted it, and then sort of repented in the church, and then obviously was very, very glad to have HW back. But I see all these moments where I think Daniel could have been really rough with him. He could have beat him and striked him or whatever. Even when he set their place on fire, he just grabbed him and brought him back. He didn't. They even showed him beating him, and I feel like he just has this great amount of patience and kindness with HW that really only a parent could have with a child like that. And anyone else would just like, probably would have beat or spanked HW for acting out.
That's really interesting.
I think that's an interesting point, and I don't disagree that he shows patience with him and has and shows kindness towards him. But I think it's like I have I guess just a cynical view towards Daniel, and I just think it's always in service of like an end goal, because he's very willing to cast him off at the very end of the movie.
Well, he is, but I think it's because I think it's because he truly loves HW, and he says in the movie to the man that's playing his brother Henry that he sees the bad in everybody. I think with a child, you don't see the bad. They're children, right? And I think like he created this bond with HW and this level of trust that this person's not going to hurt me. And I think what happens at the end is Daniel's hurt by HW for the first time. HW wants to go off, create his own company. And that's like the worst thing you can do to Daniel, right?
Sure,
and he feels so betrayed in that moment. And I think he tells him, you're an orphan and you're a bastard, only because like that's his defense mechanism, because his son is hurting him. The only person in this entire world that he truly didn't think was bad is now hurting him. And I think he just spat all that stuff out to defend himself, as most people would do when they're hurt. They say things they don't mean. And he loses the one person in his life that he cares about.
I've given the "you're a bastard in a basket" speech to so many people over the years. The other important thing about that scene at the end is like he's just like completely drunk. Like he's drunk throughout the whole movie.
Yeah.
But like he's like at that point in the movie, he's succeeded. He's he's wealthy. He's the oil baron he always wanted to be. And like through that entire epilogue, he's just like clearly.
Well, yeah, and I think it also shows that like, all Daniel wanted was to make enough money to get away from everyone. That's in his mind. That's what he wanted. But I think it's kind of this lesson of like money doesn't buy happiness. And like you see, he's senile, he's drunk, he's old. He has this incredibly beautiful mansion. His son is married. His life should be much happier, but it's not. And I think it just shows that like even these people that have these thoughts of I just want to get away from everyone, like that's not. You need people in your life. You need to have people you love and care about. And I think when Daniel, when he lost HW in the last scenes of the movie, he finally lets go, and we see that. And then I think there's also this piece of anytime Eli kind of comes into the picture, bad things happen, and bad things happened with HW, and then bad things happened with the oil rig, and it's just like there's this like trajectory of Eli comes in the scene and like negative things happen, and I think Daniel just loses it at the end because he's now lost his son, and now boom, Eli's in the picture again all of a sudden, and he's just like, he goes off on him, which he obviously does. And because there is this just sort of commonality with anytime you show up, bad things sort of happen in my life. But he has nothing left to lose anymore. He's lost his son at this point, and he's not coming back. And I think he lets the monster out, basically.
I mean, as he says, he's finished, like he's reached like the end point there. So I think the next logical, like, place to go with this is to talk about the baptism scene. And so like,
great scene.
Yeah. So like, I read that scene as like pretty transactional. And like, I don't think that Daniel is like genuinely like, repenting for anything there. He certainly hasn't like accepted the Lord into his life or whatever. Like one of my favorite lines in the movie is during that scene. He's just like, give me the blood, get this over with.
Right.
And like, to me, like that scene is kind of like him at his most.
Give me the blood, let me get away.
It's like
hear it
purely transactional, but I'm wondering if you have a different reading of that, Kat, if there's like, if he really feels
I think at first it was transactional, but I do think, to me at least, I interpret there's a little bit of him that misses HW and feels regret. He's saying this out loud to a lot of, it starts to break through after a while. And same could be said for Eli at the end when he's sort of repeating, his sort of dialogue that Daniel has him repeat over and over and over again. And you can see it at the end, it does start to affect him too. So I think in a similar way, there's a little bit of Daniel that does regret sending off HW, and he's left his son.
Right,
and there's just the super
he quashes it immediately as soon as that peaks.
And I just thought, because there's this really sweet moment after he comes and he sits back down in the church, and the little girl that is sort of I guess we'll say like the girlfriend to HW.
Mary,
it comes in and embraces him, and he's always very kind to her too. And I think again that shows, I think Daniel views children as someone who can't manipulate him, right? Because children don't do that. They're and he can let his guard down with them. And he obviously talks to her father about like not beating her anymore and make sure that she's taken care of. And I think that it does show a tiny bit of heart in Daniel, that he he does care for children because they're people that aren't yet bad, I guess, in his mind.
That's a good point, Kat, because like, what does he stand to gain from like telling Abel to not hit Mary? Like, if that was transactional, other than like, he doesn't stand to gain anything from that, I guess. So I agree. I think, he treats kids differently because of that, their innocence.
Yeah.
I'd love to see Daniel Plainview as a character, just in like put him in a different kind of movie, like a rom-com or like a family drama or something, and like let that compassion really be on full display. Like, what is he like when he's not not trying to get that pipeline? Liam, you have any thoughts on the baptism?
I mean, I love that scene. It's absolutely incredible. It's so powerful, and it just it's so visceral in the sense, Eli is sort of doing his song and dance, his performance for the people, and you really get to see him in his element, which I think is just it's just a cinematic masterpiece of Dano, embodying Eli. So I very much love that scene, and seeing Plainview sort of walk the line of dealing with his inner demons, but also completing the transaction with Eli, and that as soon as he gets away, it's best straight back to business kind of thing.
Got my pipeline.
Right, exactly. And he's like, "Yep, I got what I needed, and now I need to go." So that scene, I think it's a real pivotal moment, I think, in the film, and a really great expose on the two characters themselves of what they're trying to get.
I have a question for both of you. So what are your thoughts, and do you remember the first time you watched this and sort of putting the pieces together of Eli's brother Paul coming in at the beginning of the movie? Because I remember watching it the first time being very confused at first because they play twin brothers. Paul Dano plays two characters in the movie. And thinking, was that Eli in the beginning? Like, and I was very confused. And then obviously we find out later it's a twin of his.
Yeah.
But what were your initial thoughts? Were you surprised by that?
I remember when the movie came out, there was like a lot of conversation. Maybe not a lot of conversation, but there were people who were like, theorizing like that they're the same person. And
interesting.
PTA but later debunked that because there was actually another actor cast as Eli, I think, who was like fired like very early on. And then, PTA made like sort of a relatively last minute decision to cast.
Because Daniel does mention at the end, like your brother Paul has his own company and he's making $5,000 a week. And
so I think that's meant to be a lie to kind of like agitate Eli.
Interesting.
But I definitely think that they're like distinct people. They're distinct performances. Like, Paul has that one scene, and I love that scene where Daniel and Paul meet. You learn so much about Daniel's outlook in that conversation with Paul, and you learn something about like the Sunday family dynamic. Kind of like later on, it's illuminated by that earlier scene. But I think it's meant to be a little off-putting, and like you're meant to, I think,
question.
Not empathize, but like kind of see things from Daniel's point of view when he meets the Sunday family, and he's a little bit confused. Like you see him like shake his hand, and he's like, I guess you're a different guy. I guess you're the twin brother. But it's what do you think, Liam?
I think it's very, very definitely two distinct performances. And I feel like other than that scene where he first meets Eli for the first time on the Sunday ranch and sort of is second guessing, like, am I talking to Paul or am I talking to Eli? Like, I think obviously that scene probably wouldn't be in the film if they had cast it with someone else, but the film would still make sense even if it wasn't. But I think it just adds a level of sort of I don't know, like paranoia, but just sort of keeps you guessing.
I mean, paranoia is a big part of this movie. Daniel is, he's a very paranoid character. I think, that's, because he's drinking all the time, perhaps. And
he thinks everyone's out to get him.
No, that's a huge element of the film.
So I feel like it kind of shows that a little bit.
Yeah. I just to kind of like circle back to that initial Daniel Paul scene. I love the line where Paul asks him, what church do you belong to? And he says, I enjoy all faiths. And it's just kind of like, it's a small, almost throwaway line, but sort of like immediately, very early on in the movie, you realize that like this guy will just, he'll say what he needs to say.
He's a grifter.
He's a grifter, but we learn later, so is Eli, but there's multiple grifts happening.
I think this movie is just like, it's this like back and forth battle of like justification of their own behaviors and thinking like, I'm better than you because, Daniel's like thinks he's better because he's very little fibbing about, pricing and things like that but he's still kind of being straightforward about buying people's land and thinks he's better than Eli, and Eli thinks he's better than Daniel because he's lying to people, obviously, and for his own ego. And there's just this like back and forth, and then you have Paul in the mix too, and all these characters are, again, it's just kind of using each other in different ways and thinking they're holier than thou in their own minds of their own actions. But this movie just has so many good characters in it. It really is such a character-driven movie, and everyone that's brought on the scene is, pretty captivating, including the gentleman that comes in and plays Henry as well, his brother. And there's some great scenes in that moment that Daniel realizes, ooh, he's lying to me, and they're sitting on the beach is such a powerful moment.
Yeah.
And you can just see it on Daniel's face.
The shot when he's like in the water and like
he
the
has
camera
to walk
moves
away.
In. No, that's that's something, that's a section of the movie that is kind of like, I used to kind of like not skip over it, but I used to kind of like find that a little bit slow, like sort of like a distraction, almost. But like obviously that conversation that Daniel has with Henry, when they're sitting outside and it's I have a competition in me speech. That's like that kind of like explains everything. I think.
Yeah.
It's filled with like so many good lines. I have a competition in me. I want no one else to succeed. I see the worst in people.
Yeah.
I want to earn enough money so I can get away from everyone.
Yeah.
I've built up my hatreds over the years little by little. It's
you learn a lot about Daniel. And then even talking about, he asked him, why didn't you go back, or why didn't you stay? And he wanted to get out of there, which leads me to believe maybe there was some trauma with Daniel and his own family life. And because he really felt strongly like I had to leave.
Yeah.
And so to feel that strongly that you have to leave your family, there has to be some torment and trauma there. So who knows what Daniel went through, in his own growing up, to lead him to be this sort of horrific man that doesn't trust anyone in his life. So we don't know, but it's really powerful.
Yeah. We've talked about, I think, probably like the most pivotal scenes. I mean, I'm like the one I always go back to is the oil well, the oil derrick.
Yeah, the derrick fire.
It's, it's just such a like well staged action scene. So apparently, one battle after another is kind of being framed as this like action, epic, and the conventional wisdom is that like PTA doesn't really do action scenes, but like that oil derrick fire is like a full fledged action scene, and it's like incredibly well staged.
There is so many things to pick out in that whole act alone.
Yeah. Any other key scenes that we haven't talked about that you guys wanted to touch on? Or
I'd love to tease out the derrick scene if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
So a fun fact. As we know, No Country for Old Men was being filmed around the same time. The smoke from that derrick actually stopped production on No Country for Old Men because they were being shot so close together.
No way. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There's also there's a great story that I've heard told on podcasts and multiple times of Daniel Day-Lewis like riding through like the set of No Country for Old Men on his bike. And
wait, is he in character? Because he's
apparently like in character, because like he doesn't break the
amazing.
I don't know if that's like apocryphal or what, but I love the idea of him just kind of like just kind of like appearing as Daniel Plainview on the set of No Country for Old Men.
Same.
It might be something he was like an Easter egg. Yeah, he's like
right. Either of you guys want to weigh in on like the No Country versus There Will Be Blood? This is something that gets talked about a lot. Is I
love both, but I know or There Will Be Blood takes the win for me personally, just because to me it's the more rewatchable film. Funnily enough, I think Javier Bardem is like even scarier to me in No Country for Old Men. I have a hard time watching it because he really freaks me out in that movie. And so both are incredibly striking. And if you haven't, you should watch both. And maybe a back-to-back is appropriate for this. I think There Will Be Blood still kind of takes the win for me. Is my favorite movie of the two.
Yeah, I mean, I think There Will Be Blood is like the one that will sort of like live forever. It's like this is like the museum piece. Like this is the one that is like it's a magnum opus. It's a huge statement about like grand topics. I love No Country for Old Men, and it makes sense that it won the Academy Award at that time for the Coen brothers based on their kind of like career trajectory up to that point. But I think that No Country. There Will Be Blood will like be remembered as like the more important movie, 50 years from now, 100 years from now. It's sort of like the one that will be
interesting.
Like more.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah. I think they're both pretty important, honestly. Yeah. What about you, Liam?
To me, they're equally as important in their own ways, and we're not going to make this about No Country for Old Men because we should record another episode.
We did a podcast on No Country for Old Men.
Let's do it again.
It was a good episode.
Both culturally and cinematically important. And to me, I couldn't pick one or the other. I think they're both incredible films, and I love them both equally.
It's kind of a miracle that they came out in the same year, and like again, like that was a great time, to be a movie lover in 2007.
I just want to add, just talking about favorite scenes, I just thought of one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I think it's just really beautiful is when they're surveying the land, sort of towards the middle of the movie. There's just some really just beautiful scenery. And the way that Paul Thomas Anderson really lines up the shots, it's almost in a Wes Anderson way, the kind of center framed a lot. I love that sort of sequence there when they're kind of going through these different landscapes and surveying the land for oil and where they're going to dig this pipeline.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite lines of the movie, this is like the biggest diss, I think. I mean, there's a lot of disses I think Daniel throws out, but he tells Eli at the end, "You're just afterbirth, Eli."
Yes.
And that is like, what a stab in the chest.
Yeah.
You know, that diss is like, you're just afterbirth. And then because obviously we know that they're twins.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh man, what a line. And
you know that there's a rift between Paul and Eli.
Yeah,
I feel
exactly.
like he knows that it eats Eli up.
Yeah.
So that it's
Paul's
even
more important.
sharp in that sense.
Yeah. And your brother's gone on and he's more successful than you. And it's just like, oh man, telling someone they're just afterbirth, that's rough. Like that's
even
hard.
For like the 20th century, early 20th century.
That's like we should talk like a little bit about like Daniel Day-Lewis, and like, and his performance, like maybe in the framework of that final scene.
Yeah.
It's just like, to me, like so I'll go ahead and say, like, I think this is his best performance. I think this is sort of like the sort of the peak of his career. It'd be interesting to hear if you guys have an alternate take, but but that particular scene, if you just like watch what he does in that scene, like with his body and like the way he kind of like delivers his lines in that scene. And like the choices he makes, the way he's like eating steak with his hands, and like the way he's like hunched over,
bones,
it's just like, it's just such a master class in acting, and I just feel like that's the, like that's like the scene that like kind of explains Daniel Day-Lewis to me. And of course, like, I drink your milkshake, and drainage has become this like, like a meme, at this point. But it's because like, it's so, it's memorable for a reason, because it's just like, it's so like brilliantly delivered. I just love that scene. Like I said earlier, maybe one of the best endings to a movie ever. Have you guys seen the Instagram reel where it ends and then Born to Run kicks in?
No.
I haven't seen that.
This is like a trend. Like earlier this summer, people were just adding Born to Run at the end of like movies, and so someone added Born to Run at the end of this, and it's really good. I'll put that. If I can find it.
Yeah,
I'll put that in the
put it in the show notes.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Any other kind of like stray scenes that you guys want to? Because I want to move to like our personal top 3 PTA movies to kind of like close this out. But
I think another interesting thing that's not tied to one specific part of the film, but it's actually Daniel Day-Lewis's voice and the way that he chose to speak. And so it was, when he developed his character for this role, and he used John Huston as his sort of voice, sort of used as an homage to his sort of cadence and the way that he spoke. And
yes, in Chinatown specifically, it was that it from his performance in Chinatown specifically is what he modeled. And of course, John Huston plays like a very vile person in Chinatown. But that's a really good call. I think Chinatown is the movie that's sort of like twinned with this movie in a lot of ways.
Right. I feel like I thought that was really cool. I feel like it's just such an extra little bit of texture that really brings that character to life. Makes it more believable, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think, I guess, interesting fact about the milkshake line is that it was actually said by a senator back in the 1920s when they were talking about oil derricks and all that kind of stuff. And he's giving like a congressional testimony, and he uses the milkshake metaphor, and then that was found during PTA's research for the film, and he decided to put it in as part of Plainview's rant at the end.
Yeah, that's great.
It explains oil entirely. Like I feel like I have a great understanding of the global oil trade from I think from the milkshake line.
Also, I very much appreciated the way that he ended the film as well. I feel like the line "I'm finished" was sort of both a meta play and saying the film is finished, in fact, but also like a declaration of victory, but also annihilation at the same time.
Yeah, I like that
it's
word.
Like mutually assured destruction, kind of thing.
Yep. No, it's a perfect ending. Like it's the only way this movie could end. You know, it's no, it's just brilliant.
Like he's physically alive, but I feel like his essence and soul is destroyed.
Yeah,
I think long ago he was, his soul was destroyed. He really kind of like made a devil's bargain at some point, and
Faustian bargain.
Yeah, no, for sure. You guys want to talk about personal top 3 PTA?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. I can start with my my number 3, and this I should say like changes frequently. Like if you ask me on another day, my list might be different. Although I think number 1 is probably pretty constant. My number 3 is Boogie Nights, just because it just really kind of like sort of like rewired my brain into like how I thought about movies at a certain age, and I just think it's like he was like 26 years old or something when he made that movie, which just like blows me away. Like he was just like the amount of like creativity and skill to piece something like that together when you're that young is just he was kind of like labeled as a wonderkind for a reason because of the strength of that movie. So like I will just always have like a real appreciation for Boogie Nights. I think that the way that it like kind of like shifts in tone from being this like really like thrill ride like in the first 2 acts to being like among the bleakest things PTA has done in the final act is just really brilliant. Gets compared to Goodfellas a lot, I think, for good reason. It's riffing on those ideas and that style in a lot of ways. It's still its own thing, and it's just like such an impressive accomplishment for such a young filmmaker. So yeah, that's my number 3. Kat, how about you? What's your number 3 PTA?
Same. Yeah, Boogie Nights. I remember watching this way too young and not quite grasping it, and watching it later and really appreciating the movie for a lot of the reasons you said. And I think also just I haven't watched a ton of other Paul Thomas Anderson works. I have Magnolia on my list, and who knows, I could watch that. Maybe it'll slide into the third spot. But I know that movie has sort of a level of controversy around it too. But this movie just kind of stood out as like my first experience with Paul Thomas Anderson, and just an iconic movie that I remember, I guess, from my childhood. And just like there's so many scenes that just like really are stamped in my mind and forever will be. I am not a huge Mark Wahlberg fan, and this is like one of the few movies that I can stand him in.
He's genuinely like very, very good in this movie.
He's very good. Yeah, he's actually very good, and he was very young, obviously too. But it's one of the few Mark Wahlberg movies I actually enjoy. But
it's kind of like the role he was born to play, I think. And I don't mean that as a slight, like, it's just like, it's PT's like very good at casting, and like,
he's really great at casting.
You got the right guy for Dirk Diggler, for sure. Liam, what's your number 3 PTA of all time?
So for my age, I'm 33, so like I came into his sort of filmography quite late on in his filmography, so I haven't watched a lot of his earlier films, and I haven't watched a lot of them either. I've probably seen like 5 of his films, but even in those those films, I still regard him as one of the best filmmakers easily of all time. I would argue. So with that in mind, I would say that my top 3 would be Phantom Thread, Licorice Pizza, and There Will Be Blood.
Yeah, I mean, I love Licorice Pizza. It wouldn't make my top 3. I don't think, at least not today. But Licorice Pizza is so good. Have you seen Licorice Pizza, Kat?
I have not. No.
Oh man,
no. I need to watch it. Yeah.
Just I feel like it just really kind of really captures the essence of like adolescence.
Yeah, it's a great hangout movie. Yeah. It's just like you just want to like spend time with those.
It's more of a vibe than it is for the story itself, and I just feel like not many filmmakers can do that well.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. Kat, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Phantom Thread. I know we both share. Well, we all share a huge love of that movie. That one, it actually kind of like when I watch it, I'm always like, oh, maybe this is better than There Will Be Blood. It's kind of a toss up for me. It's really, really close because I love the characters in that movie, and the story is so phenomenal, and I think only Paul Thomas Anderson could tell it in that kind of a way. It is yeah, it's really haunting in a way too, and it talks about obsession and things like that, but is done so beautifully that you love to appreciate the movie, and you can watch it over and over. And interesting take on love as well in that film, but yeah, that definitely comes in at number 2, and then obviously my number 1 is There Will Be Blood.
Yeah, Phantom Thread is also my number 2. It's I think it's his funniest movie. Like it's really. Like the more I watch it, like the more I find just like humor in it, and it's
like a depressing comedy.
It's just I really I mean I said this on the podcast that Brett and I did earlier this year, but like I just like identify with that character, the way that he is, like I require a silent breakfast. I require like I can't have agitation early in the morning. My whole day is ruined if I'm upset while I'm having that morning coffee. So, there's something about that movie that just really resonates with me. I think it's beautiful. It just like every shot is just like so meticulous.
Yeah.
It's great. My number 1 is The Master. The Master, to me is, I think, Paul Thomas Anderson's most like inscrutable movie. It's the one that like I can watch over and over again, and like I feel like I've never quite figured it out. And that's what I love about it. I love that like he's made this. Like I feel like that one is like quite Kubrickian, in the way that it's put together, and it's like a puzzle box with no answer or solution. There's something like almost mystical about it. It's also beautiful. I saw that one. I remember seeing it in 70 millimeter when it opened, and it just like it really left an impression on me. Philip Seymour Hoffman's performance is amazing. Joaquin Phoenix is amazing. And it's just a like endlessly rewarding movie to kind of like think about and discuss. And that's another one that we should do on Time on Screen at some point. Might need even longer to talk about The Masters, because like there's
it's a lot to unpack on.
It's quite complex, but what a filmmaker, what a filmography. There Will Be Blood is an amazing.
I also just want to throw out before we sort of come to a close, just like all-time favorite. What's your favorite Daniel Day-Lewis movie?
Good question.
I mean, I think probably this one. I mean, this and Phantom Thread are kind of like neck and neck, for me in terms of like performance. Like I think I like Phantom Thread, more as a movie that I can like return to and rewatch. But the performances in both are great. He really like went out on a high note, with those last 2 performances for PTA. Another one that I'll shout out that I think doesn't get enough attention is Last of the Mohicans, which is one of my favorites. Just like amazing, like it's an incredible movie.
I love that movie so much.
I think because Michael Mann obviously went on to make Heat, and that's like kind of like the thing that he's sort of like most tied to, I think, for people like of our roughly our generation. I think Last of the Mohicans kind of gets a little bit lost in the shuffle to Heat and maybe some of his other films, but like, man, Last of the Mohicans is a barn burner. Like it's so great. It's like
it's so good from beginning to end.
It's just like the way that it kind of the last act like plays out like this long music video almost, and it's just like it's great. I want to rewatch it like right now.
It's I think that sort of ties the knot with There Will Be Blood for me and my favorite Daniel Day-Lewis movies, just because I grew up with Last of the Mohicans. It was like kind of the movie that really struck me early on. I mean, that movie was like 93 or something like that. I was a kid 90s, when that came out. And I remember just like, I'll be honest, like just kind of falling in love with Daniel Day-Lewis. And I think he's like kind of this underappreciated gem in Hollywood, because he's an incredibly like good looking man, but he's never on the like sexiest man alive list. And he doesn't really get put in that bundle with the George Clooney's and the Brad Pitts, but he's like incredibly good looking, but he plays these like really dark roles. And I think maybe gets a little underappreciated, but his long hair in that movie, he's just like, he's just like kind of a pretty looking man in this movie. And I just remember like Googling him at like 5 years old.
I mean, that's
watching this film.
That movie's kind of like it's a very like old fashioned romance, the type that like, they don't really like make anymore. And I mean, I wish they did, because it's like just such a such a great film. How about you, Liam? Do you have a favorite DDL performance?
I do, and it's it depends on what day you ask me, I guess. But he, for anyone who knows me, he is my favorite actor of all time. And like I like to ask this question to people, like if you could have dinner with anyone, alive or passed on, he is always on my list of dining guests. I just think he's such an interesting person. So with that preface, I would say that his best, most incredible character that he's ever done, to me, is Bill the Butcher from Gangs of New York.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I feel like that's such a strong performance.
Yeah, like that performance is crazy. Like it's really,
right.
It's a really cool performance. Mm-hmm. I feel like the movie doesn't like work entirely for me. Like it's not like it doesn't really come together. It's like such an ambitious, interesting idea, but like that, like he's so watchable. In that film, and like
phenomenal.
Really creates something special.
So many quotable lines, and I always feel like I'm not intelligent enough to understand the structure of that film. Like I feel so dumb when I watch that film, just because
it's not you. It's the editing and the script. It's like it doesn't really like. It's not.
It covers so much time and like. All the different characters and how they change over time and sort of, I guess I don't know enough about New York at that period of time for a lot of sort of the cultural historical references to make sense. But again, his performance in that is easily one of the best that he's ever done. Yeah. And I've got a few other films of his filmography that I need to go back and watch, like Breakfast with Pluto or whatever it's called, and some of his earlier ones that acclaimed that maybe might change my mind, but if it's not that, it's definitely Lost the Mohicans. I love him in that film. That's a rewatchable one. I probably watch that 4 or 5 times a year.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack to that film,
great score. Yeah. No, he's just a one of one actor. Like there's really no one else like you can compare him to. Just kind of like takes like the whole like the idea of like method acting to a whole new, like you guys I'm sure know the story of Last of the Mohicans. He like lived in a like a hut or whatever like for a year to like kind of prepare for that film, and like he's such a like he strikes me as like a true artist, in the way that a lot of actors, even great actors, are not. Like he only makes movies when he feels that he can, when he feels it's like lends something to his art, and it's just such a different approach.
I agree with that.
Yeah, he has such a great presence, I think, on screen too, that makes you you can't take your eyes off of him when he's speaking. And another great movie is Lincoln. If folks haven't watched
Lincoln,
that, Steven Spielberg. It's incredible, and obviously he does. I can't imagine anyone else playing Abraham Lincoln. He does such a great job, and brings this sort of warmth to the president and during that time, and very interesting movie, especially in our political climate right now. You should probably watch it. But it's a great film, and another one of my favorites of his as well.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't have a bad performance. Like, he was so picky with the work that he did and the people he would work with. And he's in a new movie this fall that his son directed. He kind of like came out of retirement to make this.
I look forward to seeing that.
I'm curious to see. Just like one of the all-time greats. There's just no one else even remotely like him.
And does he live in New York, by the way?
He has.
I feel like every photo I see of him, he's in New York.
Yeah, I think that it's at some point he was living in New York. I think he also has lived in in the UK, and I think he probably moves around a little bit. But like that's another interesting thing about him is like we don't really know about his. He's not like a tabloid figure, we always know like who Bradley Cooper is dating, and pick a famous movie star actor, like you can like identify things about their private life and their social life. But like Daniel Day-Lewis is like not a public person, like Liam, we talked about like having dinner with him. Like, I don't know, like what you'd get, like having dinner, like who is Daniel Day-Lewis? Like all we know are his film performances. So like, it's just, and that's one of the fascinating things about him is like, he kind of just like exists as this like incredible actor. And that's what we have to, that's our relationship with him. It's not there's no like watch spotting, Daniel Day-Lewis, it's kind of like, guys, this has been a really fun conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time. We went a little bit over, but I think this movie warrants it.
Yeah, for sure.
So There Will Be Blood. Watch it if you haven't. If you've made it through this whole podcast and you haven't seen There Will Be Blood, that's insane. But what a great movie. And looking forward to talking to you guys about One Battle After Another soon. Get your tickets. It's going to be it's going to be a lot of fun. And thank you to everyone for listening and tuning into another episode of Time on Screen. We appreciate it, and we'll see you back here for another episode soon. Until then, take care.